So, what feels weird?
The touchpad, it was wobbly. It's not on stable
It is.
ground.
It is.
Show captions.
So-
Make sure it's the right language.
Everybody, please feel free to jump into the chat and say hello.
You have to activate the chat. Hold on.
Oh,
I wasn't quite there yet. Okay, now it should work.
there we go. Everything customs tuning yet. Everything.
So,
Okay, good. Very good.
show
Hi, Joan Hubble from Ohio. Hi. Hi, Jeanette Stenholm from Finland. Hi. Ohio and Finland already here. And a bunch of others.
Mhm.
Bunch of others. Cindy Levick from Central Maine. Love you guys and every one of your courses.
Oh,
Thank you.
So sweet.
Allison Schmidbauer. Hello from Ohio. Hello.
Mhm.
Another from Ohio. How about that? Terry Douglas. Hi from California. Maria Blowman from Wet Ireland. Yeah. Europe is really quiet right now. Not us.
No, that's
Everyone but
you need
us.
some of your rain.
Yes, send us
If you
some
want to send some, you get
Agneta.
some of our sunshine and heat.
Agneta Homestead from Sweden, Stockholm. Henrietta Svensson from Norway. I just love the diversity of locations. Of course, if we were in the morning or the middle of the day, our time, we would have lots of Aussies and
Mhm.
Kiwis
Mhm.
and yeah, so we get that crowd too, but they're all mostly sleeping right now.
Yeah.
Instead, we get the Europeans, the people from the United Kingdom. I don't know what you would call them, UKers, the UKers, and the North Americans. Sometimes some South Americans too. We get. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sandy Kern from Missouri. Hi. Big hug. Leslie Wolf from the UK. Hello. Okay, let's get going. So we're here to talk about
Yeah, timing of the aid. So
is timing important? Why is timing
exactly why
important?
bother?
And what happens when your timing is not good?
Yeah, so I thought I would
Mm.
start with some anecdotes, basically, and stories. Shows you a little bit my own journey in that as well.
Yeah.
Remember in 1999, we went to a clinic with Dr. Kottas in Seattle.
Mhm.
One of the writers asked him, so about half holes, when do you give a half hole? And he was sort of puzzled. Is like, what do you mean? It's like, he said, you have to feel it. So it became clear to me that he never thought about that. He just does it. He knows when the horse needs a half hole. It never occurred to him that you could tie it to the footfall sequence or make it an issue. But of course, he's extremely talented. He had the best teachers ever since he was a kid. He had the best lesson horses, schoolmaster horses in the Spanish riding school. So not something he needs to worry about, right? And Klaus Fish is a little like that too. Is that, well,
From the Spanish writing.
yeah, for Spanish writing. So yeah, he's like, well, you just do it, right? You feel it, you give it when it feels right, and for me that never worked. I don't have that kind of talent. And I remember when I was, a beginner, like in the 70s and early 80s and so on, things were not going well. Horses wouldn't do what I asked them to do, or wouldn't do it especially, well. I always thought, well, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do differently? It's like, why is that not working? Then I would see a really good rider, where the horse was just doing everything. And I thought, that's not fair, for one thing. And second of all, what are they doing different? What are they doing that I'm not doing? Or vice versa. It's like, And I always read a lot, and looked through the literature, and then here and there I would find a little sentence that, this aid, should be given at that moment, or that aid should be given at that moment. And sometimes, there's actually an explanation too. It's like why it works, if you do it in this moment or not at that moment, and so on. But these hints were always spread out, somewhere hidden in the big 450-page book, you know, and they don't have indices where you could actually search for things, right? And they're not organized in a very systematic fashion. So if you read something interesting and you don't write it down, you will never find it again, basically, you know, for a lot of things, because they're stuck in places where you wouldn't necessarily expect them, you know. But so I would then start writing down things that I found useful that I didn't want to forget. I wrote them down, you know, with the quotation and the page, and so I would find it again. And made basically a list of, you know, different aids that you can give at different times and so on. And that then turned into my very first lecture topic, you know.
Yeah.
And at the time, like in the 90s, I think there was nobody else out there talking about it. I think I was the only one who had bothered to put this all together and
People were
explain.
always asking,
Yeah.
and that was their most popular topic that
Yeah.
people would request, even at locations where he had done it before.
Mm.
Say, could you do that one again? It was so great.
And
So-
ultimately, it's actually simple and very logical.
Mhm.
It's just physics. You know, it's, you know, the basic idea behind it is that, you know, with your aids, you're talking to body parts of the horse, and these body parts have their natural movement patterns. You know, legs lift up, they move forward, they touch down, they support the weight, and then hind legs push, right? Front legs support more or less, you know, and then they lift off again, and then that's it, right? And then you can either work with the movement pattern or you can work against it, right? If you work against it, there'll be conflict because the horse won't understand what you're trying to do, or he won't be able to do it even if he knows what you want. So the horse gets frustrated, angry, you know, confused, and so on. But if you can blend with that natural footfall sequence and just try to enhance what the horse is already doing anyway, like if the horse lifts his leg up and you tell him, now lift that up with a little bit more energy, more power, or now while this leg is in the air, why don't you move it a little over there to the side? Then it makes a lot more sense to the horse, and the horse is actually able to do it, right? So in a way, if you think about it from that perspective, you can figure it out all by yourself. You don't even need anybody to tell you. You can really, you know, work it out yourself. But it's, you know, in my own past, it was often, you know, some teacher would tell me something and I was like, duh, why did I not think of that myself?
Like
It's so obvious, you know, but I would never have thought of it in a million years.
And that's just the thing, you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it,
Exactly.
you know, and
Yeah.
until you come up against it, otherwise.
Yes. But it's straightforward, it's logical, right? If you, yeah, like I said, if you want a hind leg to move sideways and cross, okay, choose the moment when it's in the air, right? If you want the horse to lift with a little bit more energy, more power, more impulsion, give a quick driving aid when the hind leg is lifting, or maybe just before when it's just on the point of lifting, then you can create more speed in the hind leg, right? Some horses are a little slow behind and they keep the hind legs a little too long on the ground, and then if you drive a little ahead of schedule, so to speak, then you speed up the hind legs, you get them to lift up earlier, which creates a little bit more energy, more engagement of the belly muscles, and so on. But if, you know, you're driving with your lower leg when the hind leg is on the ground and all the body mass is on it, and now you're telling the horse lift that hind leg up, what is he supposed to do? It's impossible, right? With half a ton of horse and rider sitting on that hind leg, there's no way he can lift it. It has to get to a point where the weight goes to the other side of the body or to the other hind leg, so that the hind leg you're trying to drive is actually free to move, right? Things like that. Or if you want to flex a hind leg, you know, that's always a weight aid ultimately, right? You put your weight on that hind leg and you flex it between the body and the ground. So that only works when the hind leg is actually on the ground. You cannot flex it when it's in the air, right? You cannot put weight on a hind leg when it's in mid-flight somewhere. And when the hind leg touches down, there is first this moment where it receives the weight, it supports the weight, flexes the joints, and then the body keeps traveling, over that hind leg. The hind leg is then a little behind the body, and then it starts to extend its joints and push. So while the joints have to extend and push, you can't ask the horse to flex the hind legs and sit, because that's not possible physically, right? That would be really like a head-on collision between two cars, right? And so then you create, arguments and conflicts and misunderstandings, and So from that perspective, it's important that you know exactly what you're trying to do, which part of the body of the horse you need to talk to. That dictates, and then you need to know, what do I want to do with that body part? Like, do I want the horse to lift the leg up? Do I want the horse to move the leg over to one side? Do I want the horse to keep that leg on the ground longer? And that decide.
Flex the joint, exactly. Sit a little bit more. Do you want him to push with the hind leg?
Yeah. So that it determines which aid you're using and at what moment in the footfall sequence you apply the aid.
Whether it's a driving aid or a seat aid or a rein aid.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're not autocotas and you don't do it right automatically, probably not.
I didn't see him arrive.
But so if you're not a genius who just feels it and can do it, right out of the womb, basically, then it helps to know these things. Or even if you can do it all perfectly, intuitively, and you have students who are not as talented as you are, then you need to be able to explain it. So for the teachers, it's really useful to be able to explain exactly, this is what happens, and this is the aid that can do this, and that's the moment, and this is why, and this is how you feel it, and so so because I mentioned Otto Cotas and Klaus Krisch, they were both first chief riders of the Spanish riding school, right? So they are so intuitive, and they've been doing this for so long. They don't think about it; they just do it, and they get the timing right probably every time. But we also rode with Carl Nicolca, who was the Spanish riding school, and he wasn't the first chief rider, but he made it to chief rider in '68 and then left. He would always teach the timing of the aids, and he would do it in a bit of a, roundabout way, a little bit through the back door. He wouldn't really tell people exactly why and the theoretical background, but he had these standard combinations of aids. Like, one of his favorite was the enlarge, slow down, right? That's
which if you're in any of our courses, you probably recognize it.
So ride a circle. Then when the inside hind leg is in the air, you enlarge 2 strides, you bring that inside hind leg over. And then the next 2 strides, you half hold with the outside rein, for example, into the outside hind when that's on the ground. And he would say, like, when the inside front leg is on the ground, use your inside leg and enlarge. And then, the next 2 strides, slow down. These aids are all given in the same moment of the footfall sequence, right? When the inside hind is up, outside hind is down. He would typically do this in the trot, because trot is convenient because there's a diagonal footfall sequence. So if he says, when the inside front is down, that's something you can see, right? And then you also know the outside hind must be on the ground at the same time too. If you have a 3-digit horse and you're trotting, yeah, exactly. So
the horse has 4 legs.
Yeah, and he would spend time on this, and then he would tell the student, okay, now write it and say enlarge, slow down. So they feel it in their body, and they do it, and they at the same time they have to think about it.
Really, it was a way of memorizing.
Yeah, and that was kind of interesting. And then he would sometimes say, okay, enlarge is 1, 2, slow down is 3, 4, and then he would either call 1, 2, 3, 4, and the student had to translate that 1, 2 into enlarge, inside leg, and 3, 4 into outside rein, half hold. Or you would make the student call out 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's always activating the brain, connecting the brain to the body of the student
And in different ways.
in different ways. Yeah. Or one thing that I always found challenging in a way, that he would have people post the trot on a circle, right? Post on the correct diagonal, which means you sit when the inside hind is on the ground. And then he would say, now sit 5 steps and then go back to posting. So it was like the up, down, sit 2, 3, 4, 5, up. And he said, so on the odd numbers, the inside hind is down. On the even numbers, the outside hind is down. So next time you do it, enlarge on 2 and 4, right? So it's like sit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then you can add the half
If
ball.
you feel like that's too much math for you, don't worry. I always felt the same way too.
Yes, I mean, really.
I was like, whatever.
Yeah, he didn't do it with us, but we watched lessons, and I always thought, oh my God, you really have to pay attention. You really think, and I never thought of it that way. It's like, oh wow, it's intellectually challenging. But that's how he kind of taught people how to feel the football and the timing. And he had all these stepping sequences. He had these like 3 standard stepping sequences, usually in the rising trot. Every time you sit, it's like right, both, left, and so on. So that, the outside stirrup would hit the outside front, the inside stirrup would hit the inside hind, both stirrups would hit the main diagonal. It's always how he did that. And so they had all these ways in which he would teach people to feel the legs touching down. It was always, usually was his focus, the leg touching down, and for the driving aid, he would then always say, when the inside front is down, drive with the inside leg. So he did that, feeling the moment for the leg aid indirectly by paying attention to the front leg on the same side. Like when the front leg is down, the hind leg on the same side must be up, right? So then,
or coming up when it's touching down, the other hind leg is lifting, and that's the time to drive to get more engagement and activity.
So it's interesting. And Egon von Neindorf would often tell us in a lesson which hind leg was on the ground. Like he would pick one and said, okay, I'm going to call the hind legs as they touch down. It was always like right, left, right, left, right, 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 left, right, left, and they would go on to the next student. He didn't really necessarily explain why he did that or what the deal was with that, but in the background there was always, it must have to do with the aid somehow. Feeling the hind legs must be relevant for something.
Yeah, learning to feel when the hind legs are touching down. Yeah.
But Neindorf was a very intuitive writer too. He wasn't big on explaining theory and background, and so there was a lot of black magic, and
you had to piece things together.
Yeah. So, but interesting, right? So Neindorf and Mikolka both, kind of helped students feel where the legs are, basically, because that's the next thing, right? When okay, my leg aid can come through when the hind leg lifts up, or whatever, the half hold can come through when the hind leg touches down. It's like, okay, how do I know whether the hind leg is up or down, right? And that's the next issue you have to deal with. And you have to teach yourself to feel that, right? And that's how Mikolka did it with counting and, these things. But if you have a mirror, you can watch. That's what I did when I rode in arenas that had nice big mirrors. I would ride a circle in front of that mirror, always watch one hind leg and then try to feel, what do I feel in my body when that hind leg touches down? Where do I feel it? How does it feel? And then try to recognize it when I don't look in the mirror. And then also you can extrapolate from the shoulder blades. Like if the shoulder blade goes forward, the front leg is in the air, which means the hind leg must be on the ground in the walk and the trot, right? So I would practice
on that
the
side.
Walk and the trot on the
but
side.
in the trot, the diagonal hind leg is lifting at the same moment that the front leg, diagonal front leg is lifting.
So that's a nice thing, in the trot, it's exactly like if you can see what the right front leg is doing, you know what the left hind leg is doing at the same time.
Right? Probably the same thing.
It should be. Yeah, so you can teach yourself to feel, in other words, right? I mean, when I was young, teachers would always say, well, you have to feel it. And if you don't feel it, then you're hopeless, you're never gonna learn. Right? So that was sort of the cop out for the teachers, They didn't want to bother because, I think most of them didn't really know the details themselves. If they were good, they could do it. They just didn't know how it worked and they couldn't explain it. So it's like, well, if you're not talented enough to feel what's going on, then, don't bother. But the reality is you can really teach yourself. You just have to know what to pay attention to. You have to know kind of how things work together and how one thing interacts with another. And you have to know what's important, what you need to pay attention to. And for me, that was often the big light bulb that I was completely in the dark and I felt like, oh, I'm so untalented, I can't do anything. And I'm not feeling anything. I have no clue what I'm doing. And then I realized, oh, I have to pay attention to this detail. Oh, now I know. And now I can do it. It's not that hard, actually. Why did nobody tell me that that's important, that I need to pay attention to this little thing? Because, and then it turned out it's not that hard to feel. It's just, if you don't know that that's relevant, then you don't pay attention.
You don't know. You don't know.
Yeah. It was my journey often. Oh, why didn't you tell me? So I actually can do it. You just have to explain it to me. Yeah. So if moral of the story, if I can figure it out, everybody can figure it out. You just have to have the information. You have to know how these things work. You have to know what to pay attention to, what to focus on, and then the rest is just basically a little bit blood, sweat, and tears, to time, studying, practicing, observing, and then it's a matter of time until you can do it. Yeah, I don't know if you have questions or because I was sort of rambling.
Actually, what I thought we should also talk about is what happens when you don't have good timing. What are the ramifications? How does this show up?
Yeah.
What problems can this create? Yeah. Because they might not know whether they are having these problems or not.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that the horse just won't do what you're asking them. The horse gets confused, the horse might get angry, it might get scared, it might fight you. It can also be unhealthy. Like, for example, if you give the half hold to flex the hind leg at the moment when the hind leg has to extend and push, and you're insisting that the horse must yield and flex when he just simply can't, you will damage the hocks and you will create wind puffs and, things like that in the long run. If you do this, I mean, if you do it once or twice, no big deal. But if you do it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, sooner or later,
especially if you really insist on it.
Yeah.
You're like, that aid needs to go through because I've been told my aids don't go through. So I'm just going to give a harder, stronger aid to make sure it comes through. Yeah. And that's probably the biggest danger, that you damage the hocks and the fetlocks of the hind legs by forcing a half hold at the wrong moment. Yeah. The others, they may lead to a loss of balance and confusion and so on. But I think the half hold at the wrong time is the one that has the biggest health risks. But often, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, because that's a really important point for anybody that wants to keep their horse sound or prevent their riding from making their horse become unsound. But also, excuse me, also, there's a lot of frustration that happens from horses and riders when you're giving the aid at the wrong time and why does my horse not listen? I'm giving this aid, it's not listening. I don't know what to do. I give it stronger. My trainer says, or instructor says, give a stronger aid. Then I use the whip, but I use the spur, and I'm still not getting the response that I need. And often it's because the timing is actually wrong, and the horse learns to then tune it out when the timing is always wrong. It's like your kid babbling at you about Minecraft. It's been from personal experience. You start to just tune it out because it's like blah 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 blah. It doesn't mean anything to me. And the horse will do this too. It's like banging legs at the wrong time or reins at the wrong time. The horse just starts to tune it out because it doesn't make sense. That some horses don't tune it out. They get angry or upset or confused. Yeah, if you drive with your lower leg when the hind leg is on the ground and supporting the weight or pushing, there's nothing you can do. And then except you push a little bit. You get no reaction. And then riders usually start pushing more with the leg. And the horse will tune out or hold his breath or
brace the rib cage, and then it gets worse. The more you try to force the driving aid to go through, the more resistance you'll get.
Right. Or another big problem is aids that just simply last too long. You know, they need to be synchronized with the movement of the horse, which means there is no time when the hind leg is on the ground for 3 seconds. You know, like this, I'm not going to say who. Somebody used to teach that the half halt needs to be 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. You know who I'm talking about? You don't even need to say it in the chat. It's okay. We don't need to beat a dead horse, so to speak. But it's wrong. There's no aid that should be lasting that long, or no driving aid or half halt aid that should be lasting long.
Yeah, the thing is, a sustained pressure creates a counter pressure. So if you grip with your leg to drive, or if you hold the half halt for a long time, the horse will start to push against that. That's the nature of the horse, right? If you give a quick, short aid, it's like an impulse that can go through the horse, and the horse will hopefully let that go through his body.
It's like electricity. There's nothing to block it.
But any sustained pressure will make the horse lean into it, you know,
Like
and push against it.
We've all experienced. We're trying to do a leg yield or shoulder in or half pass. I've been there before too, not in recent years, but I've been there, where the horse isn't moving over, so you press harder and longer with your leg, and you're like, go over. Meanwhile, the horse kind of moves into the leg.
Yeah, I mean, I've made that mistake when I was young too, when I had students who did that.
And that doesn't mean to bang with the leg or kick. It means to synchronize your aid. When you have a well-timed aid, you can ride with much finer aids. You don't have to work hard. You don't have to be mean to your horse. You can speak much quieter. It's the same kind of analogy as if you say the right things and you have the attention of your children, you don't need to yell at them. You know, you can speak quietly and concisely, and they'll pay attention. It's the same sort of the same thing. Sounds like I teach parenting. All these parenting analogies today.
So Maggie Gregory says, I'm trying to do a movement for an upcoming test, but it's like my mare is not listening or can't do it, but maybe it's timing. The change from shoulder into renvers on the left rein is like trying to bend the plank. Should I time my inside leg at a certain time to get the bend? My new inside leg or left leg when on the right rein?
That's several things.
Probably actually more of a weight shift issue.
Which is related to timing. You get aids for the weight shift.
Yeah, if you're in a shoulder in left and you want to bend right for the renvers, you have to transfer the weight to the left side. I mean, in shoulder in, it often helps if you have the weight more on the outside in the direction of travel. And what I do from shoulder in to renvers, I step inside front, inside hind, and then I change the bend with the new inside leg and rein. You can even drive that new inside hind leg forward when it lifts up. And then when it touches down, I step into that new. So if you're left, it would be left front, left rear, right rear, basically. And you could double up. You could do left front, left rear, and then right rear. But that usually works. Shift the weight clearly to the inside of the shoulder in, change the bend, and then you can shift the weight to the inside of the renvers. That usually makes it a lot easier, a lot smoother. You know, whereas if the horse like leans on the right side, or especially on the right front, then you're not going to get a bend to the right in the
because the horse's weight is all on that right front, so you can't shift the weight over to the other.
See if you can rock the weight as much to the left as you can. Change the bend at that moment when the weight is on the left, and then you can let the weight go back to the right, and then you should have a nice renvers from there.
The bend.
And then if you lose the bend in the renvers, step into the outside left, front, or rear, front, rear. Drive the right, and then shift the weight back. So you can always shift the weight a little back and forth.
In fact, you should. You should play with the shifting the weight around.
Yeah, exactly. Natalie Ferrato says, Timing also can affect rhythm and cadence as well. Yes. Oh yeah, you can mess the rhythm up if you give the aids at the wrong time. Definitely,
especially with a sensitive horse.
And Natalie says, I've seen a rider recently that on all 7 horses, she caused all the horses in the show to interfere, hind leg hitting the other. Oh my God. Couldn't understand what was wrong, but I think timing may have been the problem.
Yeah, that's dramatic.
Could be, or maybe she was riding with too much angle and too aggressive with the leg. But yeah, if the timing is wrong, you can mess up the rhythm definitely in the footfall sequence. Especially if the rider is a little bit forceful and a little aggressive, then they can disturb the rhythm.
So Heather McCann asks or says, I ride mostly in posting trot. Is there optimal timing to apply the half halt when rising? Do you need to do it immediately as you start to rise and relax if you're moving back to sit?
Yeah, it would be early in the rise. I mean, I might change the diagonal so I can half halt when I'm sitting, because the half halt is a weight aid, and that's often better when you sit down as your half halt.
Basically, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just you need to know where you want to place the weight. Do you want to place it into the inside hind leg or the outside hind leg? Where are you trying to half halt to target your half halt to? And then either change the diagonal you're on or change when you're giving the aid. So, for example, Caroline always likes to half halt at the upper post, you know.
It could work. You could step into the outside stirrup as you rise and half halt on one of the reins. That can work.
Our teachers always taught the half halt when you're down at the saddle.
Because it's a weight aid, and you can put your weight behind the half halt as you come down. And if you're rising on the correct diagonal, you can either switch, post on the wrong diagonal, a couple of strides
to target the outside hind.
Yeah, to half halt into the outside hind, or sit the trot. You know, like what I was saying about Mikolka, sit 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, then it would be, what did we say? 2 and 4 would be the half halt into the outside hind, and then you go back to rising. You know, so that can be useful. I mean, I often like going back and forth between sitting and rising, changing diagonals.
It can be really good for the horse.
It loosens the back and has a bit of a suppling effect on the hindquarters too.
Yeah, it does.
If you play with it, you know, play with the height of the post, play with the diagonals, switch between sitting and rising. It's all very playful, casual, easy, loosens up your body, loosens up the horse. So
yeah, Mikolka used to have these things that he would do where you would change the number of times you were sitting and posting and in cascading numbers, either ascending or descending. And it was a little bit of a math lesson again and coordination. But it always had actually a really good effect on the horses, interestingly.
Yeah. Also, you change the diagonals. You would say something like post 3 strides on the correct diagonal and 4 on the incorrect, so to speak, or vice versa. I can't remember. He always had the bigger number on one diagonal, the smaller number on the other. I don't know. He never explained why it was like that. It doesn't really matter.
And we don't even necessarily do that anymore. What we did is we took the principle, extracted it, and we apply
just change every 3 or 4 strides, you know, even if it's the same number of strides. It has a good effect. It's loosening for the horse and for the rider. It's a nice suppling exercise.
So in answer to your question, it can all be correct and it can all be incorrect. There you go. There's a lot of nuances, but there's a lot of opportunity and possibility within that.
It's freedom. There's a lot of creative freedom. Yeah. It's not just one right way and everything else is wrong. There's a lot of things that can work, and basically have to experiment with them and see what works best for your horse.
To say there's a correct way and a wrong way doesn't mean there's only one correct way, and it's very confined. There's actually multiple correct ways. You just have to know what you're doing, why, when, and how.
And many things can work, and often it's just a matter of playing around with it and checking out what works, what doesn't work. Then you ride another horse, might be different, you know, different things might work for the next horse. And, you know, if you find something that works really well for your horse, could be different in 6 months, maybe it won't work so well. And maybe things that are not working well today could be just right in 6 months or in a year, you know. So that's why it's good periodically to run the same tests, just in case something has changed, because that really happens. Nothing is ever set in stone. Nothing is ever, cut and dried. Really, everything is always changing. Heidi Absher says, will you be going over the timing for flying changes, for lead changes?
For lead changes.
Not so much in the timing of the aids course. We have a flying changes course where we do that.
Yeah, it needs kind of its own space, its own thing to develop even further. Because there's more than just the timing of the aids.
The timing of the aids course is more basic, and then the lead changes are already a little bit more advanced, a little bit more specific. I mean, you can chat about it here and there, but it's not part of the course,
Although you can extrapolate quite a bit to get your timing from the materials in our timing of the aids course, which we haven't even really talked about. I did drop the link, but we can talk a little bit about that if you guys want.
Terry Castagna says, how does stirrup stepping fit into the timing of the aids? Does it confuse the horse to be doing stirrup stepping for a bit and then try to add an aid for something? No, it doesn't. It's a very intuitive aid. The horses don't have to learn stirrup stepping, only the riders do it. It's a weight aid, it's very natural. It's
in their body. They don't have to think about it and interpret it. It just happens in their body.
It just influences the flow of the weight, the flow of the energy. And usually stirrup stepping, we combine it with a rein aid. In theory, you could step into one stirrup and drive with the other leg.
Yeah, sometimes step, drive, step, drive.
It's not something you do all the time, right?
Yeah.
We can do step, drive, like same side, but then you step one step and then drive the next, maybe. But you could step into the right stirrup and drive with your left leg. If you step into the right hind, you could drive with the left. But it's like a specialty case that I don't do very often. It happens here and there, but it's not standard for me. Don't want to do too many things all at once because it can get muddled a little bit, right? So
we try to be clear so that we're not doing the rein, the leg, the weight, and the stirrup all at the same time and every step. This is just too much. You also want to give a lot of time for where you're giving no aid, you're just sustaining the movement so that you can check in, assess things, let the horse self-carry too. The horse shouldn't have to be micromanaged every step. We step in and change things when we need to, and then we back off and let the horse be on the seat, on the aid, and you get to enjoy it for a moment so you're not micromanaging everything. I don't think that's what she was asking about, but it made me think of that.
Julie Keith says, I have the opposite of this issue, but how do you get a horse to go forward and stay forward in front of your leg without kicking all the time? Notice a lot of people doing this with what they say are lazy horses. It's a big topic. It depends on why the horse is behind the leg or lazy. Could have a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's because they're not balanced and stiff and braced somewhere. And then as you loosen up the stiff muscles and you balance and straighten the horse, they become more and more active and lively. Some of them are shut down by the rider. If the rider is not balanced and, heavy with the reins and stiff in their hips and unbalanced, then the horses start to brace against that and they can't go forward anymore. So it takes probably a little bit of investigation to find out why the horse is doing this.
Of course, we can improve quite a bit with our timing to improve the lazy horse, but you also want to determine the source of the laziness. Sometimes it can be, like you said, muscle blockage or something. So sometimes it can be a lameness. Sometimes it can be all sorts of things. You want to sort of unearth that. And you can do that somewhat by refining your aids too, because then if the horse immediately responds better by giving better timing, right away that was it.
Yeah, and horses that are a little lazy, you often have to be super clear, keep the aids light and short and energy behind it, and make sure that in between aids, you're completely relaxed, that there's no residual tension, because any tension in your body will zap the energy out of the horse. So it's often even helpful to go relax, 8, relax, like long relax, quick 8, long relax.
Or I like to always equate it to starting to whisper.
Mhm.
So the horse expects you to shout and the rider gets suckered into shouting with their legs every stride.
Mhm.
So instead you refuse to play by those games. No, I'm gonna write the rules here. This is as much aid as I want to give that aid, and when the horse doesn't respond, you need to come with, usually it's a vibration of the whip, not hard, but it's a agitating aid that sharpens the horse's attention to the leg aid, and then you come with your leg aid again, no more than you wanted, so that you tune the horse to respond to the leg aid that you want and refuse to do more. If the horse suckers you into doing more, then the horse is won and not you. And I'm not saying this is a battle, but these are smart horses oftentimes that are real energy conservers, and they would rather put up with a banging, kicking rider than have to work hard. And our objective is not for us to work hard, it's to get the horse to use themselves fully. Yeah. And the timing is part of that too. Oftentimes when riders are giving the aids at the wrong time, they're having to work really hard because half the aids are being swallowed up in bad timing. So every once in a while, the aid is by chance, by complete chance at the correct time, but the rest of the time it's not. And so those aids have no effect. They get suckered down into the abyss of nothingness. Wasted energy.
So Natalie says, work in hand really helps to see the effects of timing, and even with the younger source, as I teach small basic things, I find amazing results just as I find the right timing.
Yeah.
Being in the position of starting new youngsters, I marvel all of them again at these thoughts. Your courses have really helped my thought process be so much clearer. Thank you.
Thank
I really encourage others to join in these courses, no matter your level.
Yeah.
Your thought process will grow exponentially. Thanks for all you've helped me think through. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, work in hand and long reining played a big role for me too, because you see things, right? You see what the legs are doing, you see the effect of your aid, you see if the aid goes through or not, you see if the horse blocks you somewhere, you also see if they're straight or crooked. It gives you a picture to what you're feeling. Like when you're riding, you just feel, you don't see really what's happening. But in hand and on the long rein, you really see how the different bones interact with each other, where the energy transmission breaks down, where the horse is braced and locked, or where the energy exits because the horse is getting crooked. That helped me a lot. That improved my riding a lot. And it gave me a whole other mental clarity and understanding, seeing it. And of course, you see it, but you feel something because you hold the reins, you hold the whip, and so on. So you feel the aids going through or not going through. So if you have a chance to do a little work in hand or long reining, yeah, you should definitely do that, because it's super educational. It helps you feel your timing, your understanding. There's lots of benefits. And the horses improve because you can explain things to them and they just have to deal with their own body and their own balance. They don't have to balance somebody up there on their back.
Yeah.
And so makes the horse's job easier. That's why they usually like the work in hand and the long reining.
Yeah.
Unless they've been beaten before.
Yeah, unless they've had a bad experience. And then it's hard. You find a way to bridge that. That goes for everything with the horses. Yeah, I think those are all the comments. Maybe let's talk a little bit about our course, because we are open. Enrollment is open right now for our timing of the aids course. How about that? Let me think. We're talking about timing. This is going to be the third time that we teach this course. It is a course that's really designed to be for any level of rider, any level of horse, because it's really working less on the horse. There aren't overt exercises, although we're adding some exercises this time as suggestions of what you can do, because people wanted to know how can they practice these elements. So we're adding some exercises in there, but it's not really an exercise-based course. It's really a theory and rider's aids course. So you're working on your seat and your aids and improving your understanding of the footfalls and feeling where the legs are, how the swing of the rib cage is, feeling the pulse of energy as it arrives in your reins, and then learning how to synchronize this with actually applying the aids. And so it's a deep dive look into sort of like a spa day, 10-week spa day, and to really rewriting how you communicate with your horse, because really a lot is lost in the translation. You know, when you're, it's like you're speaking a lot of gobbledygook with your horse if you're giving aids at the wrong time, or aids that don't make sense to the horse. So the kind horse will probably just ignore them. But then they don't respond because half the time you don't make any sense, right? You're speaking gobbledygook. So the horse is like, oh, maybe I'll pay attention, maybe I won't, but I'll just kind of follow along, carry her along because I love her, But then there's the other horses that get upset, they get angry, they get disobedient, they start spooking because nothing is making sense, and it's agitating to them when things don't make sense. It can even be borderline abusive at times. Not that I'm not saying any of you are being abusive, but there are times when riders will really insist with harsh aids on a timing that the horse absolutely cannot accommodate, and that is unfair.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a 10-week course. Every week we release a brand new module, 10 modules, of course, 10 weeks. And each one has a theory. We have Feldenkrais, Feldenhorse. So these are things you can do with your horse, right? That's in here. Feldenkrais is in here. We have imagery lessons. There's audio lessons that you can listen to as you're riding and ride. So it's a lesson that helps you assimilate a lot of the timing concepts that were taught in that module, and you can go explore this. Also, the Feldenkrais concepts, it incorporates all of it, and you can go explore these things as you're riding. And we start on Friday, this Friday coming up. I did drop the link. Oops. And I will do it again in Zoom. I've also done it in Facebook. You can also go to artisticdressage.com and find the information right there. I've done this course, but yes, absolutely. You will be receiving, Julie, before we start on Friday, you'll be, as alumni, you will be receiving an email with instructions on how to get into the new course, because upgrades are automatically included. And that means you will get the new exercises that we're adding in to the course. But Julie, you'll know these exercises. You were in our other courses. They're basically very simple exercises that you can do with a horse at any level, because we have a lot of people in this course that take it with young horses or rehab horses, or horses that are quite old, but they're keeping them in work to keep them sound and happy, but they want to continue to perfect their own polish, their own understanding. So they're taking this course with the older horse, with the horse, or the rehab horse, or horses that are anywhere on the spectrum, working great, but they want to refine their own timing. Then there's a whole bunch of other riders who are having issues with their horse. They're not able to ride lateral movements. They're not able to, their half halts are not coming through because they know they have a real sneaking suspicion it's the timing. Or their driving aids are not coming through. They're having to work way too hard. So we have a whole bunch of people that come to the course because they have a specific issue that they want to work on. We also are covering the aids for the rein back as well, because so a lot of people think you just basically pull on the reins so the horse goes backwards. But this is really, you might get the horse to go backwards, but it's not necessarily a good quality rein back. The rein back, you want the horse to sit into the hind legs as the horse goes backwards, and not to push with the front legs backwards. And so we talk about this. We talk about the bending aids, the turning aids, because a lot of people have a hard time turning in one direction. Or I remember we had a student years ago who could not turn her horse. She would come for lessons and she would trailer in, and she could not turn her horse. It was a timing issue. It was aids She didn't know what aids to give, and she didn't know how to time her aids so that it made sense to her horse. Once she got it, it was fine. From then on, it was easy. But for a while there, it was like turn left at the half school line, and the horse would keep going. And like, what happened? She said, I'm trying to turn. But what happened is she's pulling on the rein because she'd been taught to pull on the rein, but her seat was saying to go that way. So the horse was turning ahead and going that way. Of course, the horse was obeying her because her seat was contradicting what the reins and legs were saying. So we get really clear on this. We help you break it down and help you to assess yourself. Anything else, Thomas, that you can say about this course? So you're the one that built the whole thing.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the important things. It's basically based around these basic movement patterns of the horse: up transitions, down transitions, driving aids, restraining aids, bending aids, turning aids, sidestepping aids, rein back.
Yeah.
Things like that. Aids for lengthening the stride, aids for down transitions, halting, up transitions, and things like that. There's always the theory and then the explanation of the actual aid. And when you really study aids and timing of the aids and so on, it's good to keep the exercises really simple. I mean, I used to do this first at the walk on a 20-meter circle, and then at the trot, and then simple patterns. And eventually, once I had a hang of it, then I would do it in more complex exercises, and I would add the lateral movements, and now see how these aids function in a lateral movement, and so it builds. But initially, start really simple and start slow.
Yeah.
Take time to really observe, feel, think, apply.
And that's where if you have a really young green horse, it's in a way one of the perfect courses to do with a young horse. Not that the horse is so much benefiting, they need the mileage, they need the kind, conscientious mileage. But then the rider is really working on themselves. And that's something that I do when I ride young horses. I work on my seat, I work on my aids, I give myself little seat lessons as I'm riding the young horses, because the horses just need to be really stable, kind, supportive, and they need to figure out their way of going. They need some mileage, not mindlessly going around conscientiously, but really, I can't do fancy exercises and complicated movements with them. They really need things very simple and clear. So I work on myself. And I think this is a great course for doing with a young horse like that, because you really can, or a horse of any level really, but if you have a young horse, a horse that just doesn't know that much yet, as far as dressage goes, it's a great horse, because a great horse, there we go. Because you can just work on yourself. It's really, I always call it the spa day, the 10-week spa day, because you're just working on yourself. I used to have lots of students that would come for seat lessons. And they said, this is my spa day, they loved it because they would get on the, and they didn't even have to hold the reins much of the time, and they could just work on their seat. It was such a luxury. And well, you have to hold the reins because you're not at the lunge line with me, but it's still a little bit of a spa day. You get to really take the time to learn your own timing, your own understanding, your own feel. So you develop your feel, so you aren't guessing anymore, and you're not feeling stupid anymore because you can't feel the footfalls. I remember when people talk about footfalls before I really knew what to look for. I was like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. I'll just nod my head and pretend I understand. And this is gives you the chance to really cement this into your body, in your feeling, in your understanding. And from there, you can go and work on anything. It is a great complement to any of our other courses. People always ask, does this, I'm already taking this course, can I take this course too? Absolutely, because the two you can, like we have our straightness course going right now and our through the back course. And people have asked, can I do the exercises in the straightness course and still do what you're teaching in here? And absolutely, the two will not contradict each other at all. Just basically the only question is, do you have the time to go through both of them? But if you don't, if you want to do it at your own pace, it's no big deal because you have lifetime access to all the materials. And with this course, the timing of the aids course, you get automatic upgrades to future versions of the course. So you've got always included, which is a great deal because we have 6 Q&As this time, and in those Q&As you can ask questions about anything you want. So you get amazing support every time we run the course. And so high and right shoulder, I think she's asking a question. We have a question here too.
Yeah, Lavina says I work a lot with a cabochon when doing work in hand. I revisited recently your top line makeover module. I noticed that he isn't as responsive to rein aids as when I use a single rein on the middle ring. This is very apparent when trying to do transitions and laterals, shoulder in hunches and half pass, which work great with a single line. Am I too micromanaging, doing too much at the wrong moment, or perhaps my body language doesn't come across? I mean, it could be that it's a bit of a habit, like if he knows the single lunge line and the 2 reins are new, then it could be that he just doesn't understand the 2 reins as well. Another possibility is that the cabochon reins
is responsive
to the rein aids as
using
when I use he's responsive with a single rein, but not with 2. That's how I interpret it.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have the 2 reins on the outside rings, they tend to have a little bit more of a lateral bending effect, and the one on the middle, I think, goes through the spine more. If you're thinking of half halls, like a half hall on the middle, it's possible that goes through better than half halls from the outside. The outside rings are good for bending and elevating and so on. But of course, you can educate the horse and teach him that you expect a certain response when you're half hall on the outside or the inside ring. You want one of the hind legs to flex more, but it's something that you might have to just revisit and explain to the horse. Oh, it's 29.
29.
It's been written normally.
Spring
So
chicken.
When Pandarup style groundwork. Yeah, so I mean,
Okay.
this is basically the two things that I would suspect. Either he knows the centering really well, and with the 2 reins, it's just new, and you just have to explain to him what that means, and then it will just be as good. Or on the side, they have a little bit more of a lateral bending kind of effect, and not so much the half halting,
in which case you have to make sure that he's not becoming crooked and the energy's leaving somewhere, as you give that aid, because if it has that little bit of a lateral bending, if he's getting a little crooked, then the energy, instead of coming back through the horse, it gets it goes out the shoulder on the other side.
Or you may have to, I don't know, if you half hold on one of the reins, maybe support a little more with the other, so the horse doesn't bend the neck where he shouldn't, or doesn't bend the neck more than he should.
You frame a little
because
bit.
that's a danger if you half hold on one of these rings on the side. And you're not supporting with the other rein. It could be that he just turns his head and then the half hole doesn't go through. That's another scenario that I could picture. It's hard to say without seeing it, but these are the 3 main reasons I can think of. So Lavina says, true, could be that I need to use my both reins under the chin strap. Experiment. See if you can modify what you're doing. And then, of course, if you're walking in a different place, when you have 2 reins than just the 1 rein, that can make a difference, and your body language is different. And he may be new for him, so maybe he doesn't quite understand the body language, so you have to explain that to him. That's another possibility.
You can sometimes bridge it with a verbal cue. Give the verbal cue for a while with the rein attached to the middle rein, so that he really understands it, and then transfer that and give the verbal aid when you apply the rein aid with the rings on the side, and see if you can help him understand that you mean the same thing. See if that helps. Sometimes it's an issue of the horse becoming crooked, just enough. It may be imperceptible, but then that becomes an energy leak for the aid. It could be a lack of understanding, in which case you can find ways of helping to bridge that understanding for the horse so that he can accommodate the request. So he certainly sounds like he's a willing horse.
Yeah. Sally says I definitely need to do this course again now with my youngster. We'll look forward to receiving your email.
Let's do it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Davina says, thanks, Shana Thomas, for so many useful suggestions. Lots to try out and get communicating.
That's right.
No. Cindy Levick says, will the material in the upcoming TOTA course be the same as last year? New recordings. I've been working on material on my own, but thinking of re-enrolling for this upcoming
You don't
course.
need to re-enroll if you were in it before. You'll automatically, you'll get a link later this week to upgrade to the new course. It's a no charge upgrade with this one. Some of our courses we charge for an upgrade. This one we're not charging for. So you'll get a link for that. Most of the material is the same as last time. It's only last year's. We filmed it last year, but we are adding some new material. But we didn't refilm any of the material that's existing. We're just adding a little bit more in. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you too. Thank you everybody for being here today and helping to engage in this interesting conversation. And like I said, the TOTA course, as we call it, timing of the aids, is beginning on Friday. We would love to have you in it. It's a great complementary course to anything you're doing, and you can do it at a slower pace if you need to. No worries, no worries. It's a great resource to have in your library. Also, we will be doing another live on Wednesday on the topic of, let me look it up because I don't know it off the top of my head. Still on this same general topic. Oops, I have to move this out of the way so I can read it. Okay, it's on influencing your horse's movement with your aids. You can see that this is a related thing, but we're going to actually talk about influencing the movement, making the how to influence the way the horse moves, not just timing the aids with specific footfalls and so on, but how you really influence the movement with your aids and your timing. Yeah. So Maria Bloman says, looking forward to the course. Thank you for tonight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you later.
Yeah. See you soon.
Bye.